Um, so I'm going back now. What happens to your life? I mean, overnight it gets a million views. When you go back to
Mhm.
school the next day, are people starting to realize, or does it take time before people fully understand around you what's happening?
Yeah, I think I was out of town on like some school trip uh, while it was all going down. And so I came back a few days later. And so it had been a few more days of like garnering up attention. And yeah, the first day back at school was pretty intense.
Mm.
Um, which, like, looking back, I'm like, I don't know why this happened, but like at recess, like every kid in the school just like came up and like I guess
Mm.
had questions or were like so equally confused and like
Wow. Okay.
trying to I don't know do something all
So,
being 12-year-olds.
so at
But
first it wasn't like super negative amongst your peers. They were mostly just curious what the heck was going
yeah,
on.
I think so. I
That's
think
okay.
so. And then I mean honestly like from that point, because everything got so insane in like my world and now there were all these opportunities and obligations and us trying to figure out what was going on. um I didn't spend a lot of time at school, and so
Really?
yeah, I mean I started doing like pretty poorly in my classes, and I was, which like my parents being in like medicine are obviously like insane about
Hmm.
their expectations. So I started doing like really poorly. So they ended up taking me out of school and putting me in a homeschool to finish the year. There were only like a couple months of the year left. And yeah, I mean, I had definitely some experiences with some kids in middle school around the time it was like really happening that were pretty shitty,
Really?
just kids like being stupid,
Yeah.
saying little things or singing the song in like a clearly not,
Yeah.
positive way, which like I wasn't looking for people to be like, I love your song. Like, you're amazing. Like,
Mhm.
even that felt really weird to me because I was like, well, I didn't like this, this feels like it has nothing to do with me and what I
Right.
wanted to do,
Right.
So, yeah, it was pretty much just that.
That's interesting. So you did homeschooling for a few months just
Yeah, a
because
few
you had
years actually.
a few years.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Was that almost to get away from all the, because I feel like it would have been pretty hard for you to be, or maybe not hard, but different
Hmm.
for you to be going through like high school and middle school and stuff normally
Yeah.
in the face of all that.
Yeah, it was. I mean, because it just kind of like kept ballooning in my world, and like I got pretty isolated from some of my friends because obviously, like I was in a really weird headspace and tackling a bunch of issues that
Mm.
I'd never dealt with before, and my friends were also probably like, "Hello, like where the fuck are you? And what are
Mhm.
you doing?" When I'm like up here, for the first time and working and trying to figure out what the hell is happening. Um, so it was, I spent my first couple years of high school doing like online school.
Mm.
And yeah, that was like probably the lowest pit of my like emotional
Yeah, I can
health.
imagine that would be
Yeah.
super isolating, just not
Yeah.
being at home, doing
Yeah.
school there, and then like, I don't know, do you even get to socialize at that point?
I found some friends through like Tumblr actually, which was
Hmm.
how I kind of got connected to YouTube when I was like 16.
Hmm.
I would just spend so much time online, and yeah, I kind of lost like a lot of my friends um, from before. Lost a lot of connection with them, and just kind of did my own thing. And like my parents were obviously working full time. My brother was in school, so I was alone for
Hmm.
the majority of like being 14 and 15, other than coming up and doing, like at that time I was with a manager that wanted me to go record new music
Mm.
and do all this other stupid shit, honestly. And yeah, it was really really a pretty intense period.
So when you say that was the lowest point for you during that whole arc, like how old were you at that point? Like 14, 15?
14, 15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just overall, like feeling like depressed and stuff like that.
I
or-
was so depressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was on, at one point, I went and saw a therapist. I was on antidepressants. Those did nothing for me. I mean, I basically, like, I think the thing that I felt at that time was like, whoa, how did this just happen? Where, like, I was, less than a couple years ago or less than a year ago, I was in a place where I was like exploring and like so excited about like what my future could be like like before Friday ever happened. I was like such a like happy little musical theater kid, like so excited and passionate. And like at that point I literally felt like all of that had just been like sucked out of me. And now I don't even get to like explore that. Like everyone has said like, no, we don't want you here. You don't belong here. You've actually ruined the sanctity of this for all of us. And like, all of the scathing, like ruthless reviews that were going on at the time. And then also like dealing with now being a kid in the industry where like everyone is, taking advantage of everything, that you want to do or think that they should have you do so that they can capitalize off of it. Like it's really hard being a kid in a world where like you're in an industry where everyone is only just trying to figure out how they can, capitalize off of you.
Do you have any regrets kind of how it was handled? Do you regret being homeschooled or doing the video at the time? Did you regret doing the video at all? Do you wish you could just like go back in time or?
Oh, I probably had huge regrets.
Yeah.
At the time. Yeah. Cause I felt like I'd literally like ruined my life.
Yeah.
I was like,
like
what
it
am I going to do?
Just pushed you to like mature overnight, because it's almost like before you were this kid that could just be a kid and naive and, like you said, explore and imagine what the future would be, and then like and maybe not overnight, but over like a couple months.
Yeah, I mean, I think that all of a sudden now, like once everything happened, my brain to cope was just like, well, how do I make people not hate me?
Shit. Yeah.
So I like just tried to, cope with what I thought that could be and became, not that any 13-year-olds have a sense of self, but like that development for me was so delayed because my whole teenagehood became like, how do I become, how do I find a group that like identifies with me and like thinks I'm like, not this like bizarre, like weird, dejected person. And which might sound like extreme to people who are listening, but it like being a kid, like you have no other experiences.
That doesn't sound extreme at all.
To base your life.
No,
on.
the experience you went through was like, I mean, nobody else. Your experience was so unique that
Yeah.
I can imagine it'd be super hard to find anybody to relate with you.
Yeah. I mean, I was really isolated and I spent a lot of my time online. Like that was what's so ironic about the whole thing is like I spent so much time isolated by myself trying to find who I was that like that was when like my love for like music and finding the artists that like really resonated with me and all of that really began. Whereas like I was like, just like a little 13-year-old like Justin Bieber stan before. Like that's how I feel like I started to find like some semblances of like real deep love for music was because that was literally like all I had alone in my room and Tumblr, and yeah, it was an intense.
Were you guys ever able to make any money from that whole situation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I own the master to the song.
Okay.
I didn't write it, so I don't own the publishing, but I own the
So you
master.
own the recording. So anytime anybody used the song, you get paid. And then also, does ARC get paid for the writing? How does that work?
Can't talk about that.
Oh, you can't talk about that. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's nice though that you at least made a little bit of money from it. And are you still getting paid for sometimes people use it and
Yeah, sometimes.
nice.
I mean, I like have a lot of other stuff going on now, luckily, that it's not my, main source of revenue, but it did. I mean, my like the way that it works in the entertainment industry is like when you're underage, the way it's supposed to work at least is like if you're an underage person in the industry, you get a Coogan account set up. So when you turn 18,
Right.
20% of everything you've made gets opened up to you and only you. Which my parents would have never like touched that shit. But yeah, so I mean, because people be out here being
Have you ever
messy.
have you ever felt unsafe during this whole situation?
Yeah, not necessarily related to any of the people that we've talked about, but like being a young woman online attracts, unfortunately, naturally, like some really insane people. And I've had some experiences where people who have inappropriately showed up at some of my parents' businesses, have showed up at my shows, who have made some comments or written some crazy emails. I one time when I went back to public high school had like a letter sent to my school. Yeah.
Like what? What did the letter say?
It was like it was sent to the police department, or I don't know. I got called out of school for it, but just like some like gibberish remarks about me and my family, and classic like
Jesus.
nonsense stuff. Yeah.
Like serial killer shit.
It was, I mean, they ended up like tracking it down and realizing it was like a, like.
Oh, they investigated it.
Yeah, I mean, they have to, against like a child.
So that's terrifying. I mean, I've had stuff like to me happen as an adult, and it scares me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there were death threats like right after Friday. We had a security officer outside our house for like a month.
So was that like a state issued security officer, or was that like private security?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good question.
That's crazy.
Yeah. People be out here doing some really, really insane things and saying some insane things.
Yeah.